Hey guys, Addict Cyclist here with a new video kind of showcasing these two awesome machines. I did make a previous video where I was comparing the two based on my first ride impressions of the Factor Ostro. So I urge you to please go back into the video library to take a look at that, where I kind of go in depth. And also, before we dig in here, I ask you to please consider subscribing if you find this content enjoyable or if you find this content useful for helping you make a decision on either of these bikes. And just wanted to kind of do a follow-up video here. So let's dig in here. So not everybody always needs two high-end bikes. I certainly don't, but I want two high-end bikes. And the reason for this is as follows. So there's really no debate that the System 6 is probably the fastest bike that you can buy. It's just remarkably fast. It's stiff, you know, it's relatively light for an aero bike. It is it holds speed extremely well, and for the price, in this case, this was an Ultegra Di2 build, you're not going to find, you know, a faster bike at this price point. However, you know, after spending about 2.5 seasons on the Cannondale, there were some things that I felt like I was missing. So my previous road bikes consisted of a Scott CR1, a Scott Addict Team Issue. I rode and raced two LA Sprints. I have a Trek Madone 9 that's currently at my Florida condo. And I have these two Aero machines here. So when I spent 2.5 seasons on the Cannondale, you know, again, there's no debate. It is fast. You know, you buy this bike for one thing only, and it's pure speed. You know, it holds speed well. You know, it is, you know, our group rides typically here in New Jersey, in our group, range between 25 and 26 average consistently. You know, once in a while we'll squeak out a 27, but that 25, 26 is basically the weekly, you know, race pace ride. We also do a weekly practice crit around a service road around an air park. So since the season, you know, was kind of cut short, or in this case, you know, really non-existent because of the sponsorship and some of the COVID issues, you know, we basically kind of decided that we're just going to kind of put on our own little race series. One of our friends even got himself a leader's jersey to kind of circulate amongst the crowd here. So it was pretty cool. So, you know, again, you can look at one of my videos previously about the Cannondale and the Factor and why I chose the Factor to have as a secondary bike. And it's basically simple. You know, the Cannondale's fast. That's it. It's stiff. You know, it's a little unforgiving. It's a little chattery. Yeah, all right. So I had some comments in my last video about, you know, what kind of tires do you use, the size, if you tried tubeless. I tried it all. I've tried tubeless. I've tried wider tires. Right now I run latex tubes in both of these wheel setups, and I just found that the bike is extremely stiff and pretty much unforgiving. So, and I'm coming off of two LA Sprints, and if I were to compare those two, those bikes use a lot of road feedback and road buzz, even with, you know, tubeless tires and deep carbon wheels and carbon bars and carbon saddles and C-posts. The Cannondale is a little bit smoother than the two LA Sprints, although the LA Sprints were actually a snappier bike to sprint and to kind of accelerate on, where the System 6 does require a little bit more work to get to speed, but it holds speed better than anything I've ever ridden, including this Factor. Very, very, very similar, but it holds speed slightly better. So one of the reasons why I bought the Factor is, you know, if I'm riding, you know, 200 miles a week, you know, a couple 50-mile rides here and there, and a couple little races here and there, you know, I just really was kind of getting beat up. And I wanted something a little bit more enjoyable and I would say equally fast, but a little bit more compliant and more comfortable. And this is where the Ostro really shines. So Factor basically had built an Aero machine to be, you know, almost 1.25 pounds, 1.5 pounds lighter than the Cannondale. And it is extremely comfortable. You can see the deep tube shapes, way deeper than the Specialized Venge or even the new Tarmac SL7, which is their do-it-all bike. So if you're going to compare the Factor to an SL7, in my book, it beats it in every area, including price. I mean, you're not going to get an SL7, you know, at this spec with group set, and or even if you go with a SRAM Red or Dura Ace, you know, for the price that Factor is letting these bikes go for, around 10 grand in that build, where you're up almost 15 grand with a Tarmac. So basically, you know, you've got something that is probably more aero, equally light. I would say probably equally compliant and comfortable, because the SL7 is nowhere near as stiff as the SL5 and the 6. I've had a lot of feedback from fellow riders that have tried the SL7, and they just feel like it's a wet noodle compared to the SL5s and 6s that they previously rode. So again, I have no experience on it, so this is all hearsay and secondhand. But you know, this Ostro, for this price point, for this quality, and you can find out more about Factor, and I'll include one of the links to the owner, Rob Gitelis, about why Factor is unique and how they have their own factory and the quality control and the involvement during the build process. You know, right now, Factor is one of the few brands that's just cranking out bikes. I mean, right now you can go on and order a bike and you're going to have a turnaround between 45 and 60 days. You know, if you do that with any of these big brands, you know, these big retail brands, you know, you're lucky if you have it in, you know, a year, sometimes even 2 years at this point for some of the Tarmac S-Works builds that they want to get your hands on. So, you know, for the price point, the quality, you're not going to find a better bike than the Factor. Now, the Cannondale, you're not going to find a better price for a big box brand in store for as fast as it is. But in terms of an all-rounder, the Cannondale's just not it. It's going to be this Factor. It, you know, from the a little bit less than half a dozen rides that I've had on it so far before it got cold here in Jersey, I can tell you right now, it is a wonderful machine. It accelerates fast, it holds speed. I would say equally or maybe a shot less than the Cannondale, but it's a lot more enjoyable to ride. It's a lot more comfortable. It's more compliant. There's almost no road buzz. You know, when you hit something, you know, the rear does not, you know, like literally bounce off the ground or no loud banging. Same thing with the fork. You know, it just seems to be like a buttery sweet ride, but extremely stiff. And the only way to explain this is to just go out and ride one, you know, to really get your senses on how good this bike is. It's so good that obviously, you know, Chris Froome had also decided to become a partner in Factor. And you'll find a lot of these guys, these Pro Tour riders, you know, will tell you that, you know, they get on this bike, and including Phil Guyman, and say they've never ridden a better bike. And I really feel like they've done something very special and unique here with designing something that is extremely aero, extremely light, very twitchy, and yeah, just basically the full package. So I'm keeping both of these bikes. The Cannondale will basically be the crit race machine for this season, and the Factor will be my fast group ride bike and touring bike when I want to go out and do a 50, 60, or potentially a Century, although I don't get too excited about those anymore. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of just touch on that. You know, both fantastic bikes. You know, the Cannondale is like an American muscle car, where the Factor is basically a, you know, like a European sports car. Porsche GT3 versus a Mustang Cobra. And so that's the best way to kind of describe these two. And again, the build quality on these are great, but, you know, it's little things where everything comes together and fits so well. You know, the tolerances on the Factor are just really, really special. Where, you know, the Cannondale, it's got a couple little issues. Obviously, there's been rubbing on the fork because it doesn't really fit inside of this chine that they created. There's a little bit of scuffing in there. You know, that's basically like my biggest complaint about it in terms of the fit and finish. But everything just seems to be tighter on this bike, the Factor. So I will have more videos on this as the road season will come to play here come April here in the States. And I'm hoping to have more videos. So I urge you to please subscribe, please follow along. And yeah, that's basically it. So I appreciate the views. Thank you so much. Be well.